Hey everyone, welcome to the Forever Young podcast, where we meet with anti-aging, longevity, and regen industry experts to unlock the secrets of staying forever young. This podcast is sponsored by Harper Media. If you're interested in our solutions to grow and scale your business and stand out strong against your competitors, comment growth in the comments or visit our website at theharpermedia.com. Now, let's start the show. I'm here today with Angel Turlington, a nurse practitioner, founder of Southeast Aesthetic and Wellness, and a lifelong advocate for women choosing themselves. Her work blends advanced skincare solutions, functional medicine, and hormonal testing and gut healing. But at its core, it's about helping women come home to their bodies, reclaim their vitality, and age with power, presence, and purpose. Angel, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Hayden.
And thank you for being here today. So, Angel, can you tell us about your background and experience? How did you get started in the wellness industry?
Well, my journey has been basically a self-discovery journey myself. I have been a nurse for almost 30 years and a nurse practitioner for over 20 years. And I began initially in women's health from the very first nursing job I had, which was in labor and delivery. And I thought that I was going to develop into becoming a midwife because I had experienced that myself with my first child. I chose midwifery as being the source of my care during my pregnancy and delivery. And I loved the normalization of birthing because I believe that that is something, there's no question that that has been how things have been done since the beginning of time, right? And I had to make a choice along my career in which direction I wanted to go because it does require advanced education for you to go into a midwifery or a mid-level practitioner degree. And so when it was time for me to go back to school, I sat down with my husband at the time, and I had remarried and was expecting to have more children. And I sort of had to make a decision about what I felt like was best for my family. So I chose to go into um, a women's health role that didn't require me to be out of the home as much. So I went into an office-based setting and worked in our OBGYN practice that we opened 2 days after my third baby was born by a midwife in a home birth setting. It wasn't a home birth setting, it was in a birth center, but for all intents and purposes, it was outside of the hospital, which I have to give kudos to the man who let me do that as an obstetrician because, they are medically driven. But it worked out great. And he's a go-getter, that little one. And so I cared for women in the office setting, and it was very fulfilling. The point of what I wanted to be part of is more of that journey piece, right? And not just in that acute setting of a hospital. And I actually sort of fell into aesthetics when aesthetics first started to become hot in Eastern United States. It sort of started in California and made its way across the country. And I didn't know much about what was involved in a medical aesthetics career, but I pursued that because I thought it was exciting and it was another way of empowering women to look good and feel good. And I grew an aesthetic business within my OBGYN practice, and it became very successful. Slowly and surely, it started to become its own entity. And it was a blessing that I had the opportunity to still see medical patients while I was considering this, what I thought was going to be a side hustle, if you will, that really started to bloom into my own career and our separate career from just classic women's health care. And I, in the last few years, well, not the last few years, but about the past 15 years, I really started my own wellness journey, and I just felt like that you could not attend to the outward appearance without dealing with how good you feel inside. I know that helping people in their appearance does make them feel better and makes them step out more and show up more, and we are a youthful society, so aesthetics was fabulous, but I essentially decided that I wanted to add in more of that wellness piece. And wow, what has opened up, in the last 5 years as I have educated myself has just been unbelievable. So I furthered my education and have a functional medicine certificate and learned about how to provide lab testing and gut testing to then facilitate a custom health and wellness plan. So it's been a really cool ride that has been self motivated and yet also fulfilling in that I know that as people start to embrace more and more, they're owning their own health and looking at our system that does not provide solutions to promote a healthy body and correct instead of just covering symptoms. I'm starting to see the patients come around to like, okay, wait a minute, this is another way that I am in that empowering journey with them, to say, wait a minute, maybe I can find a solution and not just a symptom treatment like what our typical medical model is doing today in our healthcare system.
And congratulations to you on starting a business like 2 days after you gave birth. That's so amazing. It never ceases to amaze me just the incredible things that women can do. That's really cool that you did that. So, congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know, when there's one thing about being an entrepreneur, and that is that you have tenacity and you're going to show up, right? You're going to get it done. And unfortunately for women, and I don't see it as an unfortunate decision that I chose a different pathway of what I thought I was going to do, because I did want to be a mom and I did want to be available for my children and I wanted to be present for them. Um and yet, there is a lot of balancing that goes on when you are trying to be career driven and still be, mom.
So, when you had your OBGYN clinic and then you started to branch into aesthetics, what are some of the aesthetics treatments that you started with?
Well, there were only two products in the aesthetic space when I started in 2003, which was, excuse me, I think it was 2005. So 20 years, almost exactly. Almost
One of them
exactly.
was probably laser hair removal, right?
Yeah, it was laser hair removal, and then the injectables were Botox, and we had one filler that was called Restylane, which is still a very popular filler on the market today. But those were the only two products available in the United States at that time. So those were the two big ones, and there were still like what we would consider a little higher level of aesthetics, in that we got into deeper chemical peeling and some of the other additional things, but there wasn't nearly the amount of devices that we have out there today.
Yeah, there's a ton these days. When you started the wellness portion of your clinic, what are some of the wellness treatments and services that you started with?
So it's been actually a bit of a challenge, because I don't know if you have encountered this, but the wellness space is somewhat overwhelming, right? It's like, what do you pick? Who do you listen to? How do you subscribe to, the theories of the what, right? So so I have just now actually really funneled into my focus, which is gut health and hormone balancing, essentially. But we we've always offered, wellness supplements, and which kind of goes along with medical grade skincare, and IV therapy is something that we've done for some time. And yet I've learned as I have become more educated myself that I believe that even those things like IV therapy should not be DIY, where you just walk in and as a layperson are choosing what IV therapy you need, because we now have testing available that I can specifically say, okay, Haydenn, I have done a blood test on you that tells me that you have, the COMT gene, or you have an MTHFR mutation, which means you don't methylate well, so that I need to give you, ingredients in your IV that specifically your body calls for. And so we're working very hard on just getting people to appreciate that they need to work directly with an educated clinician to make these decisions and these choices about what's best for their health journey.
I like that approach because, you know, some of the other Ivy clinics that I've been to and spoken to, you do just kind of pick what it is that you want to do. So to know that there's a test that you can give to people to know specifically what it is their body needs, and then you can pick the right IV for them is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's probably one of my biggest peeves right now with the wellness that I'm seeing happening, in the United States, is that, everything is becoming available to a consumer. And as I say, like my motto, 1,000% is become the CEO of your own health. No question about that. But you guys aren't, most people aren't healthcare providers. And I've shared with you about, even some discoveries that I've made within some of my own testing that I've done has stimulated me to educate myself further in what those results mean, and then be able to apply them to my own body. So I think that, sometimes it can be a waste of people's money, honestly, because
Yeah.
they can receive those results, and the person who is offering this as a DIY solution are not really helping people find the purpose of those tests, so that they can use those results to choose what's best for them.
So, on that note, you run basically a wellness hub where you have all these different treatments and a more holistic approach to wellness and medicine. What are the benefits of going to a wellness hub like you have and someone who can look at your health holistically and select good treatments for you versus just kind of picking and choosing on your own?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's essentially it just comes down to that it's an individual discussion, and everyone, and you and I have been on a different journey at different stages of our lives, both spiritually, physically, emotionally, and I have to find out where that person is at. And remembering that my audience is 99% female, probably one of the biggest challenges that I see facing women is some of the things that I shared about with my own journey, in that women are very, very, very busy, and they have a lot of responsibility for their entire family, even their extended family, and then their careers. And lots of women tend to maintain their career and their household. And so I then have to help them make choices about choosing a pathway that is something that they can do, that they can manage to fit into, their lifestyle. So it's really very much based on that lengthy discussion that we have about what is bothering them the most, and how I can give them the guidance and the pathway and the roadmap to make improvements in those places.
Awesome. And, you know, women have been in the space of aesthetics and wellness for quite a while. And you even mentioned that 99% of your clients are female also. Why do you think it's taken men kind of a longer time to be open to aesthetic treatments and wellness treatments? Because I know that more of them are kind of trickling in. I've talked to other spa providers and clinics and everything, and they told me that they're seeing more men these days. But why do you think it's taken men so much longer to catch on to these things?
I don't know, and I've always wondered, if it was regional to I live in the South, the Southeastern United States, and I feel like a lot of men have almost felt like they were too masculine for that. They didn't care about, and men, let's face it, at the end of the day, men aging and their appearance of aging doesn't affect them nearly as much as it does women. It doesn't affect their careers as much. Their appearance doesn't change as much because they have thicker skin. They don't lose their hormones in their early 50s like we do. Men's hormones, women kind of go here, 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 and men, maybe have a steady decline that's a lot more gradual. And quite honestly, it's a known fact that women make a lot of the healthcare decisions in their family. So I think that women have been working hard on driving men in, if that's the role that a female has within, a relationship. And this could be, a brother, a cousin, a coworker, but I think, the feminine is rising. And I feel like maybe now men are starting to hear us when we say, that having great skin and having, a about you, and your appearance is important, and not just from a, like I say, not just from an appearance standpoint, but also from, how that makes you feel inside, and I'm hoping that your generation is not going to feminize the aesthetic space like it has been in mine, because I think that's what has been my biggest challenge, like men and thinking about injectables, like that's what girls do, that's not something men should do or whatever, so I definitely think that women have driven a lot of that, as crazy as that sounds in the background. And then I think certainly it's nice that you're seeing social media normalize it a little bit more. And in the wellness space, I actually think it's massively driven towards men. I love the term biohacking, and yet a lot of women in my health and wellness space feel like that is a very masculine term. And I don't disagree with that. I appreciate what biohacking means, so I embrace it. But that again is where sort of that thing comes along where the guys are like, this, I can do this myself. I'll go get these tests. I can
Yeah.
do this, and figure this out, and maybe it's a lack of wanting to be vulnerable. I'm not in a male's mind, so I don't know exactly what the whole back of there that is to admit some of the, or like I say, some of the feelings, maybe of, I don't feel as well as I used to. Men are a lot more driven in. I saw a man this week, and the only thing that brought him in was his daughter. And because he's having such severe abdominal pain, that he needed to see somebody to talk about his gut because he was tired of living like this. He did not want to live like this. And thankfully, he was open minded enough to say that he didn't want to go, and I say thankfully, the traditional medical model, because I know exactly what would have happened had he gone into the medical facility. He would have been given a medication to cover up the symptoms that are being caused by a gut disorder. And after 20 minutes of talking to him, I already knew 6 things that he could do to improve his pain, before I ever even get the gut tests back, and a lot of it was obvious lifestyle changes, but there were even some medications that he was using that he had been given in the past that I know were disrupting his gut, and he just needed to be told to stop those. And you have to remember, in the medical arena, you get 7 minutes on average with a patient, or you get with a provider, and it's not enough time. It's not enough time. And that's the difference about what you get when you are working with someone like myself, is that I spend an hour with you to really dial into lifestyle and what you're eating and when you're eating and how you're eating and what you're not tolerating with food and how you're sleeping and how you're showing up, and those sort of things. And that's where you find out really where, how much of a lot of the health issues or health challenges are affecting people.
Mhm.
So we still don't see very men in my facility. I hope that in my career I will continue to see this uptick of men going in for aesthetics and wellness, and it not just be driven by testosterone, desire for more testosterone, or driven by, like I said with this gentleman, that he's in a sort of in a health crisis, if you will. I hope that men will start to become more proactive for all of that, because I everybody needs to pay attention to their health because it's all you've got.
Yeah, I agree with you. I hope more men start to pay attention to these things too. And I see it happening. It's interesting. I used to teach, I think I told you before that I taught for 7 years. And one of the courses that I taught at a high school was an elective course that I created about gender studies. And we just talked about, like, basically gender, what it is, what it means to be a male, what it means to be a female in the society, and all the different things that come along with it, all the expectations, and how men and women are basically raised different in our society. And one of the things we talked about is the difference between what happens when a little boy falls and scrapes his knee and starts to cry, then a little girl falls and scrapes her knee and starts to cry. If it's a little girl that falls and scrapes her knee and starts to cry, then everyone's like, oh, poor baby, come here, let's take care of you. But if it's a little boy, then you hear, tough it up, suck it up. So I think guys just kind of carried that into adulthood when they're not feeling well, like, oh, I'll just suck it up and it'll go away after a while. But I think that's starting to change now, and I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed, agreed. And yet, I would argue that women notoriously do put themselves last and are sucking up a lot more quietly.
Yeah.
But to your point, yes. Well, I mean, women are nurturers, and I obviously am a massive nurturer. I mean, I've probably already given you more life advice than you ever wanted to hear from me,
Yeah.
just in the short
I
time we've
appreciate it
known
though.
each
I
other.
like it.
But I also have 3 sons, and I love guys, and I love that relationship that you can have. I love the male female relationship because I we both serve a great purpose for each other in our differences, right? And I hope too that we will continue to see women be placed in more of these C-suite positions, and that leadership coming from a little bit more of a soul driven, and a respect to each other and one another. It not always be about, competition, which is sometimes what drives men, you know. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and I definitely agree with you that I have seen men not stigmatize aesthetics as much as they used to. So that's going to only continue to be stronger, I think, in the coming generations. You know, when I started in 2005, even women didn't want other women to know that they were having
Yeah, it's
injections
a
and so
big secret. Even
yeah.
that's changed now too. Like when people used to get work done, nobody wanted to say anything about it, especially celebrities. They'd lie all the time and be like, I didn't get any work done. And it's like, sis, we know, we can see it. But now it's like if somebody gets work done, they're like, oh yeah, you want to know what doctor or clinic that I went to? It's changed a lot. So it's great to see that.
No, it's so cool. I know, I know. I mean, this latest reveal from Kris Jenner has just been incredible, and it's been so cool. I don't know if you've seen a picture of her, but she looks.
Amazing, all the Kardashians. They're the one
Uh,
I found out about NAD through because I don't really watch their show or anything, but I saw a clip on Instagram, I think, of one of the daughters, Kylie or Kendall, one of those two. They were getting an NAD IV done and they're talking about how they're going to stay young forever. So then I started to look it up. I'm like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And that's when I started to get involved with NAD myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a real pioneer with NAD. His name is Dr. David Sinclair. He is sort of the grandfather of NAD and has done most of the science of NAD. And he's one of the scientists who developed the True Age test and the True Health test that is one of my all-time favorites.
Mhm.
And he, I mean, the Human Genome Project has been going on for a very long time, but the more that we're understanding telomeres and again, having these tests, right? Like we said, that can actually give you the information that can tell you that, like, yes, this is you are in a state of accelerated aging, or you are actually older biologically than you are calendar years. Like, how freaking cool is that that's available to us? It's just mind blowing that they are putting genetic testing into health care. And not to beat a dead horse, but again, we have a sick care medical model in the United States, and our doctors are being educated by the pharmaceutical companies, and it's all geared around disease and drugs to treat them, and it's not geared around how to optimize your health. And I think finally people are standing up and saying, I'm not going to take this anymore. I choose health. I'm tired of being dismissed and gaslit and disregarded, or given a prescription that is not even antidepressants. I'm not, mental illness has affected my personal family in more ways than I'd like to talk about. And yet here we are, we've got all these brilliant drugs that people are taking, and there's still a lot of people that aren't feeling as well as they feel like they should.
Yeah. And know a common, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I was just going to say, and that's what's crazy about, that's why it always comes back to the gut, because we're more bacteria than we are human cell. And so if you don't, that's why I really decided that I was going to stand on the gut health pedestal, because if you don't have your gut, and when I say gut, I mean, that's like talking about outer space, like when there's trillions of bacteria inside our body. But if they aren't happy, then nobody's happy.
I know that a common critique, especially of the American healthcare system, is that they treat more of the symptoms than they do the actual cause. My friend who's from Germany, we were living together in San Francisco a few years ago, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, what's some things about the United States that, are just kind of weird or different to you since you're from a different country? Like, what's normal here that seems kind of odd to you? Then he told me the healthcare system, you guys just treat the symptoms, but you don't ever really treat the cause. So it's like a band aid over everything. So I'm glad that you brought that up because I know that's one of the things that your clinic addresses. But before we go into that, you were going to tell me something about Chris Jenner, but I don't think you told me. But I want to know because she looks amazing. So I need to know.
No, no. First of all, I've just been, she just looks so effing good. I mean, she just looks so freaking good. But what I was going to say is, exactly like what you were saying, I was on your train, man. I was like, it was fabulous because everybody celebrated her and celebrated how great she looked, and everybody wanted to know who her surgeon was, and everybody like wants, everybody like there. When this came out on the post that I saw on social media, I mean, there were hundreds of comments that was like, I'll take a Kris Jenner, like, I'll take that. Can I sign up for that? And as opposed to, like we were saying 15 years ago, everybody would have been talking shit and saying, like, she just needs to embrace her age. She just needs to age naturally, like that's just, they've just, and as females, that is one of the things that the narrative that is starting to shift, which I think is so valuable. It's certainly valuable from a business standpoint, but Haydenn, I'm like so passion driven that what motivates me is the outcomes, not the financial piece. And women need to build each other up, and women need to celebrate, their wins, and You do you, boo. You know, if that if you've got a look and appearance, and if that makes her show up better every day for herself when she gets out of the bed and she goes to brush her teeth just like the rest of us do, if she shows up with a better attitude because she looks like a freaking $1,000,000 because she had a facial plastic surgery treatment, yes, I'm sure she's doing all the rest too, but her appearance piece is very important, and it's important to a lot of people, and I just love now that you're seeing more women celebrate that instead of condemn it, because it just has never made sense to me
Yeah.
why we haven't done more of that, for each other. And that's where, I get I don't know, I get mad at women, for not building each other up. I don't know if it works for you. You're so sweet. I know that it would compliment, but women just give three compliments to someone, in a day, and you will get it back tenfold. And I mean, it's just crazy how you can say something to someone on the elevator, like, even like, I like those shoes. Those are some badass shoes, or wow, your hair looks really cute today. I don't know these bitches, but saying something like that makes these people feel better about themselves.
Does.
It makes them feel good. And it's like spreading joy. And we should be able to compliment each other, men and women, on their appearance, and it not be taken as anything other than, again, goodness, putting goodness and positivity out there.
I agree.
So that's what I was going to say about her, is that I've just seen the biggest outpouring of positive from her new look, which is good. And it's good because she looks fantastic and she doesn't look overdone. And I
Hmm.
think that is some of what I've had to deal with in the 20 years of doing this is, when the reality show TV shows from Beverly Hills first came out and everybody was so overfilled, and we went through a time period where everyone was so overdone, and still to this day people have bad procedures done, non-surgical and surgical, but I think we're coming around full circle and realizing that the best aesthetic enhancements are enhancements that you don't really notice. And that's something that stigma is something that I'm still trying to educate my patients about. It comes up every day in people that see me, that, the best filler is filler that you wouldn't know someone had, or the best aesthetic enhancement is really only replacing the things that aging has caused you to lose, as you've physically aged. And then, with that being said, menopause kind of increases that rate of aging because of the lack of hormones. And all the more reason in an aesthetic business that I felt like it was so critical to offer. So why go outside into another space where you don't know or trust these other facilities? Why not be within my facility where you already trust me and I'm walking the walk and talking the talk like I have for 20 years? And so, now let me, support you and provide you with the hormone care that you need to make you age slower, internally and externally.
And speaking of aging, one of the things that you offer at your clinic is the biological age test. Can you tell us what that is and how you test for it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a test that you take home and do. It's anytime you test, I don't know, did you ever do the ancestry testing, the
I
23andMe?
did ancestry.com and not the 23andMe. I'm glad I didn't do 23andMe because apparently they're just taking everyone's data and like selling it off to someone else. But Ancestry hasn't done that yet. So thankfully, I did Ancestry.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know, and I mean, data sharing is happening everywhere, But yeah, there's some wild stuff that came up with that, right? When people were finding their parents and long lost siblings and all kinds of neat. I mean, good or bad, but
I
yeah. So
short
when you
child
test the
guide.
genetic,
I heard stories about guys that were sperm donors and have like dozens to hundreds of kids who are finding them because of these tests now.
I know, I know. I've always wondered about that, like how that must that's got to be humbling, and I don't think lots of times when people are selling their DNA, basically they're selling it when, I mean that stuff is they've been paid for that,
Mhm.
without sense of, I don't want to say responsibility, but yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, that means that you are producing humans.
They're out there, bro. They're out there.
Yeah,
They might find you.
exactly. Exactly, exactly, exactly. So hopefully people haven't taken advantage of people. I'm sure they have because the world is what it is. But when you do genetic testing, it's always a cheek swab. um, Most of the tests are intended to be something that you can do from home. So that's nice because that means that patients that see me don't necessarily have to be within, my local geography, because I can ship tests to them. There are a handful of tests that I prefer to do with, your venous blood source, but it's a simple test that's done at home and mailed in, and then you receive a very detailed report that gives you of like a really um, nice, relatable. Anyone, the layperson, can understand and read it enough to appreciate, like, wow, okay, I am biologically older than what my calendar years say. So, whoa, wait a minute, like I need to dial this in, and um, as I said, this particular test actually measures telomere length, which is mind blowing that we have a test available to do that from your home, because that's big science, it's big science. But this test can tell you not only what you're, and this is what the Kardashians, this is where the NAD thing came in, because one of the girls got their test back and they were all raving about how she was, you know 8 years younger than her calendar age,
That's great.
yeah, that was one of the little clips that I saw them doing. And I've done, there's several different companies, but I've done these tests, and they measure, specific markers. But this particular test also can tell you at the pace that you're aging at. So if you're aging more rapidly, and it even has a subset, because it is testing some of your genetics. It can tell you what your body needs from a supplement standpoint. And yet, like I said, having someone to explain those results is important, because and also to educate you on why you are choosing this particular brand of supplements, because that's another story. It's sort of the Wild West out there with supplements. And it's been this way for a long, long time with skincare. And people forget that your skin is the largest organ, and anything that you put on your skin is absorbing into your body and acting just like a medical or anything else would. But and there's tighter regulations on things that you take in orally, but a lot of supplements are not actually being tested to prove that what they claim is in this bottle is actually in this bottle, and at the level that it should be as stated on the label. So when I recommend supplements, I use companies that do third party testing. Same thing with skincare. Even Allergan, the company that manufactures Botox and the Juvederm products, has taken a skincare company underneath their umbrella, and they actually test, and I've been to the facility to see this, where they're actually testing their products on skin models and putting UV light on them, improving the protective abilities for blue light or UV radiation or whatever. So you have science driven, clinically proven products to put on your skin, and then like I say, testing piece, even with the skincare world, where they're saying that We test this after it's put into the bottle to say that what we said was in the bottle. And when we made this little bottle of this stuff, now when we scale up and make thousands of these in a scalable quantity, that we're still keeping that standard at what it should be. And I have a lot of respect for companies that are doing that. That aging challenge, that aging test is, it could be a real challenge. I've always come out much younger, thankfully. And yet, as I told you earlier today, that I look forward to redoing that test this month, because I have switched up and done several interventions since I took the test last. And I hope to see that my pace of aging is slowed even greater, and that maybe I'm even aging. You know, when they say there's no such thing as anti-aging, to me, if you are coming out and a genetic test is measuring your DNA and they're saying that you are measuring at someone that's 14 years younger than you, that's freaking anti-aging. I don't
Yeah.
care what it says, right? I mean, so that motivates me. I mean, it would be no more than seeing muscle that you're putting on your body when you're weight training, or maybe, the actual outcomes in your professional or personal life when you're seeing a therapist or a coach or a business coach, right? You're you want measures of success, and those numbers don't lie.
So if I were to take the aging test and I'm 35, so let's say I'm 35 and it tells me that my biological age is 38, would there be things that I could do to bring my biological age down and reverse it, or would I only be able to just slow the aging rate after that?
Yeah, you could completely reverse that process. And there's a I don't know to say if it's a buzzword, but it's really resonated with me, the term inflammaging.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Inflammation is the key thing about aging. It makes us age more than anything else.
And we live in a toxic world. We don't have, we think because we live in this highly developed country that we are invincible, because we look at things and think that we have a clean environment, and we don't. And because of the foods that we're eating, because of the poor water quality that's coming into our homes all over the United States, from the GEMF that's coming towards us, and the pace that we are moving our lives, we're all inflamed. And it's just a matter of how much inflammation you have. So the direct answer is that you want to correct that inflammation in the body, and correcting that inflammation will slow down that aging process, which is why it always comes back to your gut. So before anyone would do a test like that, Haydenn, I would always say they need to do a gut test, and they need to see how significant their gut microbiome is being affected at this moment today. And this could be if you are 22 or 62,
Mhm.
because it's just when you're ready to receive that information, and when you're ready to commit to correcting your habits and taking the ownership of your health, to take the roadmap that I can provide to correct things like leaky gut and fungal imbalances, and even change up, because a lot of people are eating things that they have developed sensitivities over their lifetime to. Lots of times, things that you really love, that you eat a lot of, you develop sensitivities to. And I can see all that stuff in a gut test. And so we dial in diet, we dial in supplements, and then we almost always have to restore the gut lining and the integrity of the gut, because when you have leaky gut, that means that now this one, it's only a single cell layer thick between the tube that connects from your mouth to your anus, has become so vulnerable that it is now opened accessibility of the foods that we take in and the toxins that we are being exposed to are now leaking out into the rest of your body, and that inflammation is what is causing you to age more rapidly. So you must repair that integrity of the gut and reduce the exposure of these things that are causing this inflammation, so that just that alone will slow your aging process down. And in the meantime, improve your hormones, increase your testosterone, wildly increase your brain hormones, your neurotransmitters. Serotonin is made and stored in your gut. That's why you can take an antidepressant and it work on the brain. But why augment serotonin when really all you need to do is feed the guys that can do that for you? So it really does fix and help with so many of those systems that make you look better, feel better, and last longer.
And what does the gut test look like? Like, how do you take the gut test?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a bit unpleasant. It doesn't hurt, but you do have to return a stool sample to the lab. So again, done in your privacy of your own home, and you collect some stool from a bowel movement and you send that into this lab, and again, all done from your home, and then the report is sent back.
Cool. And for the gut health and the aging, the biological age test, is that something that anyone in the country could order from your clinic and send to you?
Well, technically, I act with a medical license, and I'm only licensed in the state of North Carolina. So when it comes to that, even though that is, not necessarily considered standard medicine, medical care, I could be acting as a health coach. Legally, when I give you advice other than advice about music, when I give you health advice, I do have a responsibility that I'm personally supposed to stay within the state lines of North Carolina.
Okay, makes sense. And I have a question for you too. So, in talking about gut health, I've always been curious about gut health and probiotics as well, and kind of what different probiotics do for you, because there's so many different kinds of probiotics. Like, if you go into Whole Foods, there's all kinds of different drinks and things that have all kinds of probiotics in them, but I don't necessarily know what they're supposed to do. Um, I have gotten this, I brought this with me. It's a soda called Evolution. This one is strawberry vanilla, and it has probiotics in it. And like, I have a huge sweet tooth. I'm always ordering cookies from Insomniac Cookies. I'm always ordering milkshakes from, what is it, from Cold Stone. I have the hugest sweet tooth, but after drinking a couple of these over the past few days, my sweet tooth kind of just went away. And I was really surprised. If there's any probiotics you recommend, and just kind of what probiotics can do for your health and for your appetite.
So is that a kombucha drink?
Not kombucha, it's just like a regular soda, I think, and then they put it's pre and probiotics that are in it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So kombucha is a pretty popular drink because it's fermented, and fermented foods are not something that a lot of people like the taste of. Fermented foods are going to be like your kimchi, sauerkraut, things that are weird to the American diet, not typical things that we eat all the time. And yet in Asia, that's on the plate, every meal. Probiotics are tricky, and there is a difference between a pre and a probiotic. And I think this is a space that everyone gets so lost in. And we could do a whole podcast on probiotics because they've really gotten good. Because I mentioned earlier that we've had the Human Genome Project, but we've had this nationally funded research facility and mission, And that's where we're discovering all of these new strains of microbiota that live inside us. And we're starting to learn, like, for example, the probiotic that contains Akkermansia. Actually, Akkermansia is what manufactures the bacteria. And so if if you have someone that wants to lose weight and who has some of the poor eating habits and so forth, that they feel like the GLP-1s would help, or they've been taking GLP-1 and they don't feel as if they should be on that long term, then growing more of their microbiome that will support that GLP receptor place in those bacteria would benefit them, because then that will help them to do this on their own and not need the medication. So you're seeing more now of the probiotics that are pointed towards that. Then you may have some probiotics that are better at those serotonin bugs that are in there, so it's 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 hard for me to say of, like, what I would say would be, like a again, that's where you would go to a provider and talk to them about your particular situation. Even male to female, it's going to be different from what I'm going to recommend. But eating fermented foods and eating the rainbow, I always tell everybody, if you do nothing else, having the goal of eating 20 to 30 different fruits, nuts, and seeds a week. That whole concept of your plate should look like a rainbow.
Mhm.
When choosing, none of us, it's like almost like when you're craving sweets, it may be those bacteria. It's not maybe, it is the bacteria that is craving that. And so it's likely, like, if you really think about it, like deep down in the limbic brain, your body is craving that prebiotic piece, which would be like your blueberries, your raspberries, your prebiotics, the polyphenols that come from this assorted, colorful vegetable, fruit and vegetable, that give that pre-feeding to the gut microbiome. Of course, you know, sugar is probably one of the number one addictions that no one talks about too, because the more sugar that we eat, the more that we like. And some of those drinks can be real high in sugar. I have worn one of those continuous glucose monitors that goes right here on the back of your arm, that you just put your phone and it will read. It's a blood glucose monitor that's meant to be used by diabetics, but that's one of the health sort of biohacking tricks that you can do. And it's pretty powerful when you see what your blood sugar does when you drink some of these drinks, or even some of the foods that you may be eating, to see, like, wow. The first one that went to go on me the first time I wore a glucose monitor was oat milk, because that would just spike the hell out of my blood sugar. And especially for women, but just in general, spiking your blood sugar first thing in the morning, if you're having a coffee and you're increasing your heart rate and so forth, and then you have a blood pressure spike, can immediately challenge your cortisol and put you in sort of a fight or flight state. And then when you spike like that, then with every peak there is a valley, and so you can lose your ability to regulate your blood sugar when you're spiking it off and on throughout the day. So the prebiotic is more of the polyphenol groups, with all of the colorful fruits, nuts, seeds, and veggies that you should be adding into your diet, 20 to 30 a week at minimum. And then the blood sugar piece was just the concept that when you're if you're drinking something that's spiking your blood sugar, and particularly for women, first thing in the morning, when you spike your blood sugar, number one, you with each spike, you're gonna have a dip, so you're gonna crash on the
Yeah.
back side of that. And then it's sort of what I believe has fueled the coffee industry, because a lot of times, that these coffee drinks are really high sugar, and so people are chasing that. And I mean, we're all a victim of it. I mean, I'm certainly not free of that myself, but that glucose monitor, always, every time I do it, I change a habit, because it makes me say, my gosh, like red wine won't spike my blood sugar, but a margarita spikes my blood sugar like crazy because there's a lot of sugar in it. And so, I mean, it is what it is. When you're celebrating you're not, that's not a big deal. But when it's a daily habit, like oat milk, it's like, okay, I'm going to unsweetened coconut milk in my coffee or in my smoothies, because sometimes we're doing things thinking we're doing good without understanding how it's affecting our body. And then we don't realize that that's really setting us up for some challenges, in our day.
True. So let's talk about detoxification. Why is detoxification important, and what does the detoxification process look like?
Okay, so that kind of goes back to that discussion of us living as humans in the world, and we are being exposed to, for example, there are heavy metals and a lot of different things that we eat on the regular, fish, particularly the larger fish. You may have heard that tuna is one of them. Tuna was one of the health foods that we thought was good for us, right? Well, the larger fish spend more time at the higher end of the food chain, and they are they more age to them. And so there is more heavy metals in them. Heavy metals also we're being exposed to in our water system, and there's a deeper conversation about all the things that heavy metals can do to one's body, including hormone dysregulation. They are an interlink with parasites, which is another thing that people are curious about but don't appreciate that we're being exposed to. My wonderful little Stella I showed you this morning, like our pets are a major place for parasites. But a detoxification is somewhat controversial with some healthcare providers, but the OG naturopaths that have been around, the Barbara O'Neills, the gurus, my gurus, believe that you need to clear these substances from your body. And one of my favorite detox programs, I have two companies that I love, but one of my favorite detox programs is one that not only is pulling out by using things called binders, which a binder is usually a clay based or a carbon based, uh, uh, charcoal based substance that you take that binds to the toxins that you will then sweat out, pee out, poop out. And then the detox that I promote and encourage for people to do in the meantime is replacing minerals. It uses a liposomal NAD. It uses B supplements so that you're sort of pulling out the bad while you're rebuilding the new all at the same time. So normally people, when they go through my detox program, that is a 1 month program, within weeks they get more energy. They're having better quality sleep. They're feeling the effects of this. It just the toxins that are stored, and they're typically stored in fat. So people usually start to lose weight almost immediately, because when you release toxins, the fat comes with that, and they start to feel better. Understand also that when I do a detox program, it's not just about buying another set of supplements. It's actually about detoxing your life. And I don't just mean people, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
But it's things like considering your water source. I have a reverse osmosis system in my house, and I teach people even how they can get a reverse osmosis in an apartment building, because it's something that you can install underneath the countertop so that you can take it with you. It's eliminating the plastics, particularly the plastic water bottles, but the plastic containers in your home. Plastic is everywhere. It's drinking from a glass, not a plastic cup. Plastic is that we are consuming way too much of it. And we know that plastics are cancer causing, they're hormone disruptors with men and women, and men are probably, sorry, but worse about this in some ways. I feel like women, we've learned to be a little bit particular about what we put on our bodies, but not enough. But anything that's got fragrance in it, and anything that you're rubbing on your body, you want to know what's in that. So then you think about laundry detergents, anything that has got a fragrance laundry detergent. So it's not just doing this program and taking the supplements. Again, I am you can't do that and not change your lifestyle some. And so it's just educating people about those things and slowly but surely making those changes in their everyday habits.
And for the detoxification treatment process, what does that look like? Are you taking supplements? Is it like a shot? Like, what does the treatment process look like?
There is there's an IV that uses a substance called glutathione, which glutathione is very hard to absorb orally. That your body doesn't absorb it well. So that IVs that are using glutathione are usually really good, because the other thing about toxins is that that is part of what is driving this autoimmune epidemic that we have. And I don't know if
What autoimmune epidemic? I don't know if I've heard of it.
okay, so if you now that I've said this, you'll notice that I was going to tell you earlier, that we're only one of two countries that allows drug companies to market directly to the consumer.
Mhm.
But the commercials on TV, which is crazy, because why is a consumer choosing a drug and not their provider? But that's another story. But most of those commercials are pointing towards autoimmune. So autoimmune is things like rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid disorders, the gastrointestinal things like IBS, which eventually some of these digestive disorders turn into autoimmune disorders. So they affect women more than men. Our systems are more susceptible to that. But the cleaning up the body and cleaning out the body can actually fix those autoimmune symptoms and reverse your autoimmune condition. Um, um, it's incredible what we don't realize is in our control by healing the body. And so you do, if you're doing a program, you can do IVs. That's certainly an option, but you don't have to, because you're getting into more costs there, and I'm always sensitive to trying to meet the needs of everyone. And so you can do those lifestyle changes. And then typically you're using a program where you're using supplements, like I said, the binders too, or the minerals, that the added things in, so that you're actually pulling these supplements are usually actually very herbal and botanical in nature. It's just the companies have done a good job, because if you told me to go buy slippery elm and make a tea that I'm gonna, that's got six different ingredients that come from God knows where, because the herbalist is not on every, in every neighborhood. And then you got to make this stuff, and then you got to take a teaspoon and you got to drink the tea. They've just encapsulated these ingredients to make it more convenient. And so it's usually a detox is really not that bad. I mean, other than starting to take the ownership of exchanging, some of your household everyday exposures, then the supplements are something that you take twice a day, morning and night. And we typically say this is a great time to choose to eat healthy, and ideally not to drink for a month, not drink alcohol for a month, increase your water intake. And it's just a time to focus on you, and focus on making some health habit changes. They say it takes 21 days to create a habit. And so you hope that in that process, you now have changed people's way of thinking about when, they go to grab that personal care product or home product, or they, like I say, they've replaced their plastic Tupperware. And God knows, if I can say one thing, do not heat anything in plastic ever again, and that's such a shame because we are like an on the go society. So, I tell people, but people learn, they just take those things out of those plastic containers and heat them in a glass bowl, and so you're hoping that you're going to change health habits with that too. But it's not hard. A detox program is not hard. I think that's one of the things that is a misnomer. You don't have to stay home. You don't have to buy and drink 6 gallons of celery juice. Not saying that that is a wrong thing, but it's just not attainable for a lot of people because they don't have the time.
What advice can you give to someone who is curious about regenerative treatments but apprehensive about how to start or if they should?
Okay, so would say no ifs, ands, whats, or buts. You always start with the gut. I mean, you ideally you would have a gut test, and I appreciate that that may not be everyone's starting point, but when you start to understand how, like I say, we are a universe for all of these, like I say, for all of these beautiful bacterias that are inside of us, that we've got to make them happy first and foremost. And from there, I really believe that going further into testing that methylation piece, meaning that if you do have some of these genetic, what we call genetic SNPs, or these things that inhibit you from absorbing certain nutrients properly. Um, that's another test that's very valuable. I can produce a test for someone that literally can tell them exactly where they are falling short in their nutrition and exactly how many milligrams of, let's say, omega 3s they should be taking based on what their body is calling for and their genetic background. And from there, depending on your age, it could be then that you want to look at hormones. And again, I do speak to a more female based audience, and the changes of perimenopause can begin as early as 40. And a lot of women are facing the challenges of how to manage birth control and yet they're not feeling well because of maybe some of the hormones that they've been recommended to use. So looking at your hormones and how they're being affected, which also comes into a lot of that lifestyle change. And most importantly, find a practitioner that resonates with you. Someone that it's going to be different for everyone. You need someone that you feel comfortable to talk to and that you can create a relationship with, that can partner with you in this journey, because just as much as I'm sure you would say you're not the same person that you were 5 years ago, you're not going to be the same person 5 years from now either, right? And yet you need to address the needs of that person at where they're at. And so I just say that I recognize that there is a lot of noise out there, and it's important that you hone in on someone that you trust has done the work and has their heart in the right place for providing the information. Get the information that's specific to your body so that you're not wasting time or taking a supplement that is not doing anything for you, because now you're spending money that may not be what, is not necessarily what you need. So unfortunately, I think people need a guide.
I agree with you. And for people who don't live in North Carolina close to your clinic, how would they go about finding a provider who can tell them about their gut health and how to take care of it?
I there is an organization called IFM, which is a certification. It's a very well recognized certification organization that trains physicians and mid level practitioners. They are then that way that that person has done the work to become qualified. And they have a list of practitioners.
Right.
Are some of the leaders in that space, are some of the bigger functional medicine doctors like Dr. Mark Hyman. who has been around for a long time and really is a champion for health and wellness, I would probably lean in on that organization.
What does the acronym stand for, IFM?
International Functional Medicine, I am pretty sure. And they should have a database. And, looking at websites of, I mean, because they also train health coaches, which would be people that don't hold a medical license, but are experienced in gut health and so forth. That I don't know about what testing they are allowed to order and do, but it's likely that they can provide some of that information and or would be the connect if they needed some of that more higher level medical support, like if they did have an autoimmune disorder and so forth. Normally I would say functional medicine is the terminology that we're using in the United States right now. Regenerative medicine, regenerative aesthetics is definitely in the same space, but setting up consultations and we can talk to people outside the state lines and give them advice to a certain level. It's not that I can't have a conversation with someone. Absolutely, I absolutely can. And I have a $50 discovery call just to even point someone in the right direction and would be happy to do that. And I can provide them with health assistance and information. It's just I can't directly give them medical care, like for say if we were using prescription products like hormones and so forth. But when it comes to supplements and detox programs and so forth, that is more of that health coach aspect of things. And so I would be able to help somebody with that, or at least help them discover providers if they needed that extra support.
For the $50 discovery call, is that something they can sign up for on your website?
Yeah, they can book online. Yeah, and it's done just like this. I have a telemedicine portal, and they do it straight from their home or from. You don't know how many of those consults I do with women, and they are in their car.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's for privacy or if that's just really how on the go
Folks are
they
just
are.
on the go, man. They're just on the go these
True
days.
story. True story. But it's funny. I mean, it's just like so many of them are like dialing up, like, wait. I think I can see you. And they're in their cars, which like I say, like women, we get it done, But the idea of all of this is, like I say, people are busy, and I appreciate that, and so am I. And so, 30 minutes to just point somebody in sort of a basic direction, I think would probably be invaluable to most people, because I feel like that I am very well versed and recognize, where my limitations are from a legal standpoint. And if nothing else, they're not just doing it all by themselves or following the track of a wellness influencer, which I don't mean to say a negative thing, because I think their heart is in the right place with that. But just because that worked for one person doesn't mean that it's going to work for your body.
True. Well, Angel, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was great to learn about the aging test, gut health, and so many other things you shared with us. I'm really happy that you came here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hayden. It was good to see you.
Me too. Hey everyone, that's it for today's episode of Forever Young, Region Leaders Share Anti-Aging Secrets. Thanks for joining us to uncover the keys to lasting vitality. If you're interested in checking out Angel Spa, then visit southeastaestheticandwellness.com. That's southeastaestheticandwellness.com. And don't miss our next episode. Subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, and visit theharpermedia.com to explore how we can help your business grow. Stay vibrant, and we'll catch you next time.